Hey guys, Mistik here, welcome back to the channel in the Should You Buy series. In this series, I take a look at different items throughout Graal era. I rate each item on the usefulness it has to the player, the rarity of it in game, and the demand it has with the player base. Afterwards, I talk about the price and history of the item, and finally give my opinion on whether it's worth purchasing. The hope is at the end of the episode, you will have all the information you need to make a decision about buying the item or not. In today's episode, I'm going to be taking a look at an item that I've been seeing being traded a lot and fluctuating in price a lot lately. This item is the very unique Cat Melee. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting out with usefulness, this section is pretty rough for it. Cat Melee came out in a time where many new supers were being released and it was being introduced as a more of a novelty type item. Because of this, Cat Melee definitely drew the short stick when it comes to the amount of use it has. The first thing that is quickly noticed is that Cat Melee deals 8 damage. Now, this alone is not too detrimental, however Cat Melee also attacks at a very slow speed. With both of these combined, Cat Melee is outclassed by a plethora of different supers and even just basic items anybody can get. These stats put it in line with some of the worst items we see in holiday shops, and that is incredibly disappointing for such a unique item. But just wait, it gets even worse for Cat Melee. In addition to its subpar stats, it was also granted the blessing of the knockback effect, making it nearly impossible to kill any players with it. With all of this in mind, there was one other thing that gave Cat Melee a chance, and that was its special attack. However, in almost poetic fashion, this special attack is one of the worst I've ever seen. When used, your player swings the cat around by its tail, dealing 8 damage at an even slower speed than its normal attack. Also, just to make matters worse, it seems the attack only really hits like 30% of the time, so we can pretty much throw this out as a potential savior of Cat Melee. Overall, this is probably the worst item I have reviewed when considering usefulness, and because of that, I have to give it a 2 out of 10 in usefulness. The only thing that could possibly have made this item worse was it having 7 or less damage per hit. Now that we are getting into the rarity section of this episode, things begin to look up for Cat Melee. Rarity has been one of the few things that has kept Cat Melee at a decent price over the last few years. The original item was released in auctions where only 6 of them were given out during its introductory auction. Afterwards, the item remained on the auction list and has been auctioned rather uncommonly all the way to the current day. What is interesting about Cat Melee is that the item has been pretty rare within tables for roughly the last year. At any given time, it has been quite hard to find more than 2 people with it. This leads me to believe that there is probably a Cat Melee horde that is artificially making Cat Melee seem much more rare than it really is. Regardless though, Cat Melee is most likely approaching 20 total in game, but you're only ever going to see 1 to 3 different Cat Melees in tables during a day, and because of this, Cat Melee deserves a solid 7 out of 10 in rarity. Next up is demand, and this is another strong area for it. Cat Melee is one of the more unique items in the game, boasting a from my knowledge unique idle stance and animation. This is where the cat sits atop your head and kind of walks on it. I think this is the main reason why anybody really wants the item other than it just seeming quite rare. I know that this is an item that I always want to own, and I think that uniqueness is the biggest reason why. I think it just breaks up the norm of items in Graal where everything is a sword or dagger with really cool effects. I find that these novelty type items such as Cat Melee, Taco Hammer, and Fish Slap do well just from the fun and cartoony vibe they bring. Because of this, people really seem to enjoy Cat Melee, and I see a lot of people who either want to purchase one or at least want to know the price so they can save up for it. Because of this, I'm going to give Cat Melee another 7 out of 10 for its demand rating. Now that we have discussed each of the ratings, it's time to go over the price history of Cat Melee as well as its price in the current market. Cat Melee has actually been a very consistent price for its lifetime as an item. When it first came out in back what I think was 2015, it didn't even rise to a very high price. The most expensive that I remember Cat Melee being was 100k around the release of it. From there, it quickly dropped to between 40 and 55k and stayed there until very recently. In the last few months, it spiked in price, and I'm not really sure if that was due to a horde or inflation or just a general increase in demand for the item. However, this spike did raise it to around 70k. I do feel like this has cooled down to around 60 to 65k, but Cat Melee is still pretty expensive compared to its usual price. Now, we move on to what my opinion is on Cat Melee and whether I think it's worth purchasing. Overall, Cat Melee was pretty underwhelming. Its demand, rarity, and uniqueness are all pretty high, however its usefulness really drains all life out of the item. But because this is a novelty item, I have 2 opinions on whether it's worth buying. In general, to most players, I feel like this is a definite do not buy. There are plenty of other items in the 60k range that are much more useful and are still really cool items to own. I feel there are way too many items that outclass cat melee for it ever to be worth buying. However, there is another side to this argument, and it comes from the fact that I personally like owning cat melee. I think to players who are collectors, this item is one of the better items out there and is a definite buy. If you have extra shells, this would probably be one of the first items I would recommend. But with that, this is the end of the video. If you guys did enjoy, please smash that like button down below as it helps me out a bunch. Also, comment down below your thoughts on cat melee. Do you guys like the item or not? I'd love to know. Also, while you're down there, please comment what item you'd like to see next on the Should You Buy series. And of course, if you aren't already, make sure you're subscribed to be kept up to date on all Graal news, events, and items. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.